Hello, listeners, and welcome back to The Real Deal with Dee and Denice. I'm Dee Hubei,
And I'm Denise Newton.
and we're your hosts. We have an exciting episode planned for today.
No doubt.
And last week, in case any of our listeners missed it, we had a really awesome episode that I highly recommend they go check out. So, Denise, in case they missed it, what was the deal with last week's episode?
Oh, the deal was we had the amazing, incredible Skylar Jett on with us on last week. If you don't know who Skylar was, just briefly, Skylar is a humanitarian. He's a philanthropist. He is a producer, songwriter, singer. He has done some amazing things, and he was on with us, and he just enlightened us on so many things that he inspired Dee and I so much just with the work that he's currently doing. He was also a part of that Grammy Award winning team from that soundtrack, from the Titanic soundtrack, My Heart Will Go On. He sang on that soundtrack. He has performed with everybody that's somebody in the music industry, from Celine Dion to Mariah Carey to Whitney Houston to Sting to Luther
Stevie
Vandross.
Wonder, Ray Charles, all of
Ray
them.
all of these people who he has performed with. And he was with us on last week. I spoke briefly with him earlier today. He loved the episode himself. Gee, I meant to tell you, yeah, he absolutely loved the episode. He was talking about it earlier today. So he's going to be promoting us as well on his TV show from London. So, it was a great show.
It was a great show. It was just an incredible interview with such an inspiring man, and I was thrilled just to have, had the honor and experience of being able to speak with him. So, listeners, here's a quick sneak peek of our episode.
Music for Global Change is a platform and movement to inspire young people to write positive lyrical content. And so I've traveled the world, I do speaking engagements, and I challenge them to write positive music. Do we really need another love song? I mean, 5 billion, love has been said every kind of way you can imagine, right? But there's only been 192 million social conscious songs. So in 1984, right after I got out of the Commodores, I wrote a song with the bass player of the Commodores who wrote Brick House. And we wrote it to and gave it to the state of Alabama. For every family, they had 4 kids. We paid for one of their college funds, right? So we gave the money back to them, and it stuck with me that we could do that. So I said to people, man, you mean we can help people buy our music instead of just taking the money ourselves? And that made sense to me. So then another 20 years later, I created Music for Global Change. And it's been wonderful ever since. A lot of money at it, but it sure is inspiring people to do the right thing. I have guests from all over the world, and it's really wonderful for them to come on and express their feelings about social change and how we can use music to share with people and, change the world. It's that powerful.
I know we can all agree it's our responsibility. So music can save the world.
Change the world. It's that powerful.
Like you said during the episode, Denise, Skylar really is the real deal. So listeners, if you haven't already, go give it a listen. You can also find his music and his TV show that Denise mentioned by going to musicforglobalchange.com or at Music for Global Change Broadcast on YouTube and Facebook. And we look forward to bringing you others who are the real deal with more guests in the future. So stay tuned for that. But now let's set the stage for today's episode. For those of you who may be unaware, November 25th was the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The day kicked off the annual 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign, which highlights various forms of violence against women, from physical and sexual violence to economic violence and more. The campaign ends on Human Rights Day, which is this Sunday, December 10th. So, to do our part during 16 days of activism, on this episode, we're going to get real about the war on women. It's insidious, pervasive, and affects all of us. And let me be clear, this isn't just a women's issue, it's a societal issue that impacts families, communities, and yes, even men. So, all right, Denise, let's get real, let's get deep, and let's pull back the veil on the war on women. I've got some facts and figures that I would like to share about the reality of the war on women. It's real, it's serious, and it's dangerous. So we'll start with the physical and sexual violence and domestic violence towards women, because I think that's what people think of when they think about violence against women, even though we know it encompasses a lot more than that. So the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey conducted by the CDC found that approximately 4 in 5 victims of domestic violence are women. About 1 in 3 U.S. women have experienced some form of physical violence by a partner. About 1 in 5 women in the U.S. have been raped in their lifetime. And about 1 in 4 have experienced severe physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes strangulation, beating, burning, those kinds of things. So in their lifetime, about 1 in 6 women have also been stalked to the point that they believed themselves or someone close to them would be harmed or killed by their stalker. And 94% of victims of a murder-suicide are women. So I've got some more to share, but first, Denise, I know you've spoken in the past about issues of rape culture and violence against women, including online. So what are your thoughts about those?
I've been seeing lately so much. I mean, it is really just gut-wrenching to me. We're in a culture now, especially when it comes to dating, where we're having this problem where women, where I'm seeing online a lot, where women are becoming more selective in who they choose to align their lives with or get involved with. Let me put it that way. And so by doing so, that leaves a certain demographic or a certain type of male out of the loop sometimes. And when these women show they show no interest in these men, then the first thing they want to do is harm these women. And I've been seeing this a lot online. These men will, they get on these podcasts and they talk so horribly about these women. And then if some women do happen to go out with a man, and then she may say, well, thank you for the date, but I don't think this is going to work. Thank you for this evening. It was nice. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's going to work between us. But the next thing you know, she may be harmed. This is happening more, listeners. Honestly, this is happening more than you know. Some of these things don't get reported, and it is really becoming a serious problem. And I'm telling you what I see because I've been following this. As somebody who got young granddaughters, I watch this kind of stuff because I want to know what kind of world they're entering into. I saw where one guy got online and said, well, all these women that reject nice guys need to be great, if you understand what I'm saying here. So if you don't give it to me willingly, I should be able to just take it, and there should be no consequences for it because you should be giving it to us. Why are y'all not giving us the time, the play, the attention? So I'm starting to see a lot of this, and it is becoming a prevalent problem. And
Absolutely.
I hear some of the things that these men say. They say, let me use this one for instance to sum this up. There was a woman a few months back that said a man asked her for her phone number, and she told him that she, was not interested in him. But thank you, but I'm not interested. And the man picked up a brick and hit her in the face with it.
Oh my God.
And she, had injuries. And right away, most of the men online, right away, those who said she was lying was large numbers. The other big number said, well, she deserved it. Because who is she to turn him down? Look at her. She's not even all that attractive. She ought to be glad that he even looked at her and wanted to date her, but asked for a phone number. This is what's happening, guys. And it seems as though our lawmakers, our law enforcement are not taking these things as serious as they should, because it's still happening way too much, Dee. I'm seeing it on the regular.
I mean, sometimes cops are the ones perpetrating this kind of violence themselves. We've seen accounts
Yes.
of men raping women who are in their custody. We
Yes.
know that the rates of domestic abuse and domestic violence for males in the police force are incredibly high. And I mean,
Yes.
this is that like Andrew Tate incel culture that you're kind of talking about. I was
That's
listening
right.
to a teacher talk about her experiences, and she teaches young kids. I mean, like we're talking around 10, 12 years old, those kinds of young kids. And she's alarmed because she's hearing these young boys, like I said, 10, 12 years old, coming in and repeating, regurgitating the things that they heard people like Andrew Tate say on the internet. And so, you know, I think we need to really think about the impact that people like those voices can have on our kids and what they're exposed to online. I know there's a conversation about that already, but we just really need to be aware of those consequences, because if they're already at this age having those kinds of thoughts, you're not going to teach an old dog new tricks, okay? You need to get in there while they're still a puppy and teach them the right way to think about things and to be better. And, you know, you mentioned about the reporting. We know a lot of women do not report. It's less common that women report
Absolutely.
for a multitude of reasons. One, it's embarrassing. It's humiliating. They have to relive it on the stand if they were to go to trial. You know, they're going to have people saying, oh, I don't believe you. What were you wearing? That kind of stuff. And, you know, I can't tell you how many girlfriends of mine I have their location shared with me on my phone because they're like, oh, I'm going out on a date, or I'm going to the bar, I'm going to this. Here's my location. Here's where I'll be. If you don't hear from me by this time, please do something. I mean, that's where we're at right now.
That's where we are.
So, you know, it's, again, the danger. Like we said, I mentioned I had some gun violence statistics to share with you related to women. Did you know, Denise, that U.S. women are 11 times more likely to be killed with guns than women in other high-income countries?
Absolutely.
More than half of all women who are killed by gun violence are killed as a result of a domestic violence situation, whether that be an abusive family member or an intimate partner.
Yes.
And women are more likely to be killed by an intimate partner with a gun more than any and all other means combined.
Absolutely.
I mean, in fact, the presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the chance of a homicide by 500%. And that's for anyone, just in general, by 500%. But it increases the risk of homicide for women, so femicide, by 1,000%.
My gosh.
And 68% of mass shooters have a history of domestic violence. So what does that say? That says it's a precursor, and those types of people should not have guns.
They should not have guns. And the thing about it is, so many of them, they don't even think twice about using a gun in domestic violence situations, because we have taken such an approach to guns that leads people to feel like it doesn't even matter, because not a whole lot is going to be, nothing's going to change. I mean, you know, we see every day these mass shootings all the time, thoughts and prayers, and that's the end of the conversation. Nothing meaningful is going to take place, or no meaningful changes are going to be enforced until the next one, more thoughts and prayers, and the next one, more thoughts and prayers. So they don't think twice about it, because if something major was going to happen as a result, I think some people would think twice before they go and get that gun and take it out on their partners, or because you have a dispute with somebody. These days, people are taking people's lives over simple matters, over small, trivial things, just because. And that tells you they have no fear of consequence. Because
it's also what the cool down period is supposed to be for. You know, and we can't even get people to agree on that. If you can, you know, if you're angry and you can walk in and go get a gun that moment, and then take that gun and go commit a crime with it, you very well might. But if you have to wait 2 weeks, you might not jump to, oh, I'm going to kill her
Thank you.
at that moment.
Absolutely. There is no, that's it. It's like, oh, you offended me, so I'm just going to completely take your life. I mean, that's just it. It is just mind boggling to me. Oh, you looked at me wrong. You stepped on my shoe. You were rude to me. You cut me off in traffic. So I'm just totally going to unalive you. This is where we are. And it's like, there is no fear of consequence. And every year it gets worse and worse. We see it gets worse and worse and worse every year because there really are no real consequences. This is what the Republicans, they want to make people think they got a lock on Christianity. Faith without works. I have faith, but you got to, and the Bible talks about that. Faith without works is dead. So if I am a lawmaker, I'm going to show you my faith by my works. Okay. So I am going to write some meaningful legislation to stop this carnage. If you say you got faith, then prove it by the work that you do. Put in the work. And they're not hiding their hatred for anyone that's different from them. It's open. They show. Now, that's one thing they show. They may not show their faith by their works. They show their hatred. And karma is going to bite them all in their lazy backsides at some point because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're hurting people and not helping. So they need to keep the name of God out of their mouth because they are not serving mankind at all. They're not even serving their constituents, let alone mankind. They are there is self-serving what they're doing.
Like we said before, when we think about violence against women or the war on women, the more obvious things that come to mind are often things like we said, domestic violence, sexual abuse, rape culture, those kinds of things. But it includes other forms of attacks on women too. These are things like the gender pay gap, the underrepresentation of women, and other systemic barriers. So let's take a look at that. So first of all, did you know 94 to 99% of domestic violence survivors have also been the victim of economic abuse? These are things that include coerced debt, withholding necessities like food, clothing, shelter, preventing access to shared funds, employment-related abuse like preventing victims from working or going to work, forcing them to quit their job, sabotaging their employment, more. But it doesn't just happen in the home. Women face barriers in nearly all places, all institutions, including in the workplace.
The workplace.
Yes, domestic violence accounts for about 1/3 of all women who are killed inside their place of work in the US. And yet 70% of US workplaces do not have any kind of formal program or policy to address workplace violence. Furthermore, discrimination in the workplace continues to persist. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission received over 24,000 charges of workplace sex-based discrimination in 2020 alone. And most people weren't even in the office in 2020 because of the pandemic. So just to add insult to injury, pour a little salt on that wound, to this day, women still earn less than men for the same work. As of 2021, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, women in general earned only 82% of what men did for the same work. So, put another way, women, for the exact same work, position, same experience, all of that, earned only 82 cents for every dollar that a white man earned. And for women of color, these disparities are even bigger. Disaggregated data indicated that Black women earned only 63 cents, while Hispanic women earned a mere 55 cents for every dollar earned by white non-Hispanic men. So, you know what I mean? This is 2023. What are we doing?
As you're talking, I'm going to tell you the movie that comes to my mind. I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Burning Bed.
No, I haven't.
Farrah Fawcett.
Oh, okay.
And this was a movie where, and this is an extreme example, but Farrah Fawcett she married this man who was a lot older than her in the movie, and he was really, and he was very abusive to her, very physically abusive to her, emotionally abusive, and just mentally abusive in every way, verbally abusive. And his mother, they had to live with his parents for a while until they got on their feet. His mother would never speak against it, would tell her, she would come out black eyes, bruised up where he had him beat her. And his mother would tell her things like, just don't do things to make him angry. Her own mother would tell her things like, honey, you got to take the bitter with the sweet. This was supposed to take place like back in the 50s or whatever. But I'm just saying how we're not so far removed from those days and those times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me just Chris Brown and Rihanna. Okay, this was in probably around 2008. I don't know the exact year, but
Yeah.
the earlier 2000s. Like I said, I'm gonna guess 2008, 2010-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Brown absolutely beat the
Yes, he
crap
did.
out of
Yes, he
Rihanna.
did.
I
Yes, he
mean,
did.
completely swollen black
Big
eyes,
knot on her
bloody,
head. Mm-hmm.
horrible. And guess where Chris Brown is today? Just as rich, just as famous, just
Yeah.
as successful.
Beloved.
Beloved.
Mm-hmm.
He himself has said that he feels like it's unfair that he got hate and backlash for a small period. Sure, Chris Brown has pretty decent music, but are we just willing as a society to overlook all of those things? It's fine if you're talented or you're whatever. It's totally
Yes.
okay for you
Yes.
to abuse women, I mean,
Yes. How many times have you heard, well, there's no sense in completely messing up this person's life for this indiscretion? This man is a politician, or this man is an athlete, or this man is a CEO, or this man, he's got this big position, and this would totally mess up his life. She's okay. She's not dead. But you should just really ruin his life over this. But look what you've
Brock
done to
Turner.
her.
Brock Turner.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Like he what did he get? 6 months maybe? He absolutely raped a woman, was caught by other men raping this woman behind a dumpster, who those men are the
Yes,
ones that stopped him.
that's
But
the affluent
he's a
guy.
rich white kid. Exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, he's a rich white
yeah,
kid who's a really good
yeah.
swimmer. We shouldn't ruin his life over this, blah blah. No,
Yes,
he ruined that woman's life.
yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I was so furious when that happened. It just made me nauseous, to be honest with you, because as a sexual assault survivor myself, that particular story really just made me nauseous when I said, so this judge says, don't mess up his life. Don't mess up his life behind this. But this is something that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. You
Forever.
never get past this. You just learn to live with it the best you can, but you never get past this. And
Right.
this is what women have to go through all the time, often and a lot.
Exactly. Like if women that survive sexual assault, rape, etc., they will never forget what happened to them. Most women who experience some form of sexual assault, I don't have the statistic for this one right in front of me, but an overwhelming majority of women who experience sexual assault also have PTSD as a result of the assault.
Absolutely. Somebody here who can speak from experience on that one. And it's just something, like I said, you have to learn to live with it. You can't let it completely destroy you. But it is something that it's like your shadow almost. It's always there. It doesn't go anywhere. You just have to learn to deal with that. And in a place like the military, it is still a prevalent problem in the US military. I don't see how, after all these years of people talking about what goes on in the military, it still happens, and it's still so prevalent. I can't wrap my mind around that concept, but it's still happening. I remember having somebody tell me one time, Dee, when I was in the military, that what do women expect? Because I think at the time that I went into the military in the 80s, and I had a guy to tell me, what do women expect? At the time, the ratio was something like 8-1. There was like 8 men to every 1 woman in the armed forces at that time. And he said, this is a man's army. I was in the army. This is a man's army. What do these women expect? There's like 8 men to every 1 woman. So I said, so you're saying this is supposed to happen? And it was like, it's a given. It's going to happen. And this is what he said. And he said it so, like almost proudly. Like I'm making an announcement. Yeah, get ready because at some point it's coming to you. It's going to happen. And I can't say that he's wrong. And it's, it's just one of those things where men don't understand, and I'm not gonna say they don't understand. They choose to be willfully ignorant to these things, and it just seems like in too many instances the law is on their side because you alluded to it earlier when you said oftentimes the women that don't report is because the finger gets pointed at them because when my first instance with me, the MPs asked me, why did you do A? Why didn't you do B? What was going on during C? Every question was directed more at me. Okay. And I started to leave at that point. So I understand. But all in all, why is not being done? And this is why I believe wholeheartedly that they won't allow women to get into more positions of power when it comes to, say, our government. Because I believe if we had more women in more higher positions of government, a lot of this stuff would probably get eradicated in day one or dealt with in day one. And this is why they don't want it. And, I'm looking at this. I didn't watch that freak show of a debate the other night, but Nikki Haley at this point is in good shape on the Republican side because she got the Koch
Number
network
2.
behind her. Yeah, she got the Koch network behind her. She got the orange guy all in a tizzy right now. He's pretty hot about that. My point is though, she can forget it because overall they're not ready for a woman. Okay, it's just not going to happen. And because if they were, I think that Hillary Clinton would have had more of a chance of getting in there a couple of years ago if they were ready for a woman. But my point is this, you know what I'm saying? A woman, it's just not going to happen. But if a woman, whether that's Republican or Democrat, I believe a lot of stuff would get cleaned up a whole lot quicker. But that misogyny thing is going to kick in every time.
Absolutely. And that actually segues perfectly into our next bit of data and statistics here. But a couple of points before I do that. You mentioned about your time in service, and you said that you went in the 80s. I went in 2015. So we're talking 30 plus years difference here. And I went into the Marine Corps. So that's always had the lowest percentage of women out of the branches in the U.S. Armed Forces. And it still does. As of 2022, it was about 9% were women. So anyway, and the disparities are worse for women of color. Let's just know that across the board for every situation at all. But women anyway are a super minority in the Marine Corps, regardless of any kind of demographic affiliation or association. But this was a pervasive saying, women can only be 3 things. And excuse my language, these are their words, not mine. A woman can only be a bitch, a slut, or a lesbian. That's it. Those 3. So I can't imagine that it has changed very much since the time I got out of the military.
Right.
So we'll just leave that there. But, moving on into these other statistics I was just telling you about, despite making up the majority of the population, women remain underrepresented in STEM, in politics, and leadership positions basically across the board. As of 2022, women represented about 27% of the U.S. Congress and about 31% of state legislatures across the country. So that's not representative of the amount of women we have in the country. As the latest data from 2021 showed, women held only 7.4% of CEO positions at Fortune 500 companies. And while women's educational attainment has increased, disparities persist in certain fields. So we're not, yeah, sure, we have made strides, but we're nowhere where we need to be. So I would say that the war on women is alive and well, even if we have made strides in some areas. And Denise, as you already mentioned, I know that you're a strong advocate for women's representation, and you've talked a lot about this critical need for women, particularly young women, to get involved and engaged. I have
Yeah.
some points to make to you about that, but I'll let you take the floor again first.
Yeah, we definitely need young, energetic, especially progressive minded young women to get out there. And, because, they're change makers. Listen, my mind goes back to Parkland. When that,
Mm.
oh my God, that horrific event happened down there. And those young women, particularly, I can't remember her name, but I can see the short haircut. She had the
Emma.
short, yeah. She, when she took the mic, and because she really became, her and David Hogg pretty much became the face of Parkland. And they've really started to change the minds of a lot of people, or at least get through to a lot of people about gun violence. Young women are going to be the ones to change these mindsets, and it's going to be them, because I think older women from my generation are so used to men and just being just that it is what it is mentality. It's always been this way. It's just not going to change. They don't want to upset the apple cart. They don't want to, you know what I mean? They just want to be seen and not heard. They don't, you know what I mean? So I'm not like that, but so many of them are.
Yeah.
These younger women are just not, a lot of these young women not afraid to go out there and say what needs to be said. And I want to be one of those back there, being the wind in their backs, like, go, say it, do it, and because that's the only way it changes. We can't let this loop continue. It is just crazy. Because we'll be doing this for another 150, 200 years till Jesus come. It would never stop. I do not want my two little grandchildren to be living in the same kind of world that I'm living in the next 20, 30, 40 years. And the same cycle is still here. This thing has to be broken. It's going to take your generation. It's going to take the Gen Zers, the millennials, and those that's coming after the Gen Zers. Y'all are the ones that's got to change this mess. I want to be able to sit back and sip my coffee and be watching and say, oh boy, these girls ain't playing. They ain't taking no mess. This is what I want to see, because those are my generation. Too many of them, like I say, it's not that they're complacent, but they just have taken this is how it's always been approached. No, I'm not one of those. But I'm just saying, I'm ready to see change. When I really get into the retired mode where I'm doing nothing but sitting back in my recliner, sipping my lattes and all of that, I want to sit back and watch these energetic young women, really kick behind. This is what I'm ready for. And it's going to take you guys to do it.
Well, somebody's got to break the cycle, and I'm more than happy to take up the mantle, take up the torch from somebody like you. And I must confess, though, Denise, I'm not sure that I could ever see you actually retiring. I think you've got too much energy, too much spunk to do that. But you don't just try to do things. You said, I hope that I'm the type of person that's like the wind in the sails for these young people. I try to be that. But I don't think you try. I mean, I feel your wind in my sails. And so, that's part of the reason that we're doing this podcast. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. I'm taking up this mantle one day, and we're gonna make a better society together.
I'd love to see it. Yeah, I'd love to see it. It breaks my heart when I look at, even when I see a congressional hearing, and I look around and just see all these old white men. I'm not saying this from a racist perspective. When I look and just see all these old white men, listen, it's time for y'all to go home. It makes no sense that you're serving 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 terms in Congress, because you're not making a difference. You're not doing anything different. And you see very few women. And then you see how they get treated. They get talked down. When the women try to make a statement or make a point, they get talked down like they're children. And I get furious. See, this is why people used to try to get me involved in politics. I wouldn't last a week because by the time I get through cussing them all out in there, they would have the sergeant at arms to come drag me out of there. I'd cuss them all out and get drunk out of there is what would happen. You know, they're like, you're out of here. I would be the George Santos, but not doing the things that he did. I would get drunk out of there just for cussing them all out from the top to the bottom.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh,
so.
just so our listeners, if they've not seen George Santos's meltdown, do yourselves a favor, give yourself a laugh. Really, it's a really interesting meltdown.
He's really kind of funny. I ain't gonna go off. I know we're still on this topic, but you know, he is really funny. I mean, he is comical right now. It's a freak show over there. But anyway, yeah. I need for the young people, young girls, we got to crash through that glass ceiling. I know we've put cracks in that glass ceiling. We got to shatter that thing, y'all. Kamala Harris has come close, but it's not shattered yet because they're going to make sure that she does not break it. They're going to make sure that she never becomes president. They're going to make sure that.
And she's fighting a two-front battle there because not only is she a woman, but she's a woman of color.
She's a woman of color, yes. And they definitely don't want that. Period.
No.
Period.
You don't want either one, let alone someone that's both.
And she's both. She's a double. So, you know, I think when Barack Obama came in and was able to do it twice, there was in the minds of some, we could never let this happen again. And now you got a woman who is one heartbeat away, and then a woman of color. So I think they would do everything in their power to ensure that she never destroys that ceiling. So
yeah,
and then the same thing would be Nikki Haley would be in the same category. So
yeah. And Nikki Haley makes a lot of her advances by acknowledging that she is a woman, but that doesn't make her a woman, essentially. Like, you know, like diminishing, oh yeah, I'm a woman, but that doesn't mean and then she goes on to repeat all the same tropes that her gross male colleagues say about women. And I'm like, honey, whose team are you on here? This isn't about left or right. It's just, you're a woman. Get it through your head, honey. And like, you know, RBG, someone asked her, when will it be enough women on the court? And she said, when there are 9. And I think people's knee-jerk reaction is like,
I love that.
Oh, no, not 9. Why would you want the whole Supreme Court to be women? And, you know, I'm not saying the entire Supreme Court has to be women. But what I am saying is that there's a huge difference in the outcry about a court full of women than there was about the entire court full of men that we've had almost the entire existence of the United States.
Since the beginning, since the inception. Absolutely. It's always been a court full of men. And you managed to get a couple of men of color up there. You know, and getting back to the aforementioned Nikki Haley, how can anybody think that she should be the one when she said if Trump is a nominee, she would still support him. And somebody with 91 federal indictments, federal charges, all these indictments, mishandling our classified documents and all, and you would be willing for this person to be given the nuclear codes yet again and classified secrets. Nikki Haley, you are canceled, sweetheart. You're canceled. Bottom line.
And while we were on the topic of the Supreme Court, I did just want to throw out rest in peace to Sandra Day O'Connor, who was the first woman on the Supreme Court. She has passed away December 1st at the age of 93. So, you know, rest in peace to her.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, just because something has always been this way doesn't mean it always has to be this way. And I think that kind of encompasses everything that we were just saying. Now I would like to move on to another area of rollback on women's rights that I am particularly passionate about, reproductive freedom. If you can see from my shirt, it says Pro-Ro 1973, kind of subtle, but still sends the message. One of my favorite sweatshirts. So I've got a lot to say on this issue. I might have kind of a long-winded response in a minute, but it'll be worth it, I promise. So first, I know you've got some current news to discuss, Denise. I'll provide some key context after that. But what in God's name is the deal with Ken Paxton?
Oh my God. See, this is what I'm getting to the point where I don't even understand why are people even in positions. So there's a woman who in Texas who has a non-viable pregnancy, and she's been to the ER multiple times, severely ill. And the doctors have told her and made it clear that this is a non-viable pregnancy, and that for her to continue with this pregnancy is going to eventually affect her life if she continues on with this pregnancy. So there is a judge that has, and there down in Texas, it's supposed to be a no with having
Yeah.
abortions in Texas. Well, this judge has granted this woman the right to go ahead and have this abortion, because eventually it's going to kill her if she continues to carry this non-viable pregnancy.
And even if it didn't kill her, it's traumatic and
It
horrible.
is.
The
It is.
child is not able to survive. And this is obviously seeming like a woman who intended to have a child and is probably quite distraught that her child's non-viable. So
And
that's another layer.
Right. And another piece to that is even if it doesn't kill her, it also could kill her chances of having another child down the road. Also,
Oh my
it could
God.
make her sterile as well. And so the attorney general has decided to go
Ken
against what
Paxton.
this judge says and tell her and say that any doctor or facility that performs an abortion on this woman will be prosecuted. They will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law if they perform an abortion, even though this is a non-viable pregnancy. What the whole hell is happening?
This no abortion, no exceptions ideology is really dangerous, disgusting, and not at all representative of the American public's view about abortion. And just so listeners know also, Ken Paxton is somebody who has been indicted. He on
Yes.
fraud charges and all kinds of other dirty, nasty stuff because even Republicans have a hard time stomaching Ken Paxton. Now look at these dirty, underhanded tactics that he's using. I'm going to be talking about this a bit in my deal of the week because there is a lot of really insidious and often overlooked, dangerous things that the Republican platform does behind closed doors with the curtains peeled back. And we need to be really vigilant about them.
Absolutely. And I have seen other cases where doctors are afraid to touch women who are having like legitimate miscarriages. Nothing that the women have done at all. They are going through an actual miscarriage. They present to the ER or to their doctor because they're bleeding, and they are actually having a miscarriage, and the doctors are afraid to touch them because
Right.
of
So
these
let me
laws.
Exactly. So let me just, highlight what you're saying there is that this issue isn't just about reproductive freedom. It is about women's health care. It is about women's lives. These kinds of decisions affect them in ways, and other women in ways far beyond actually having an abortion. Some of the drugs that are used to induce like a medical abortion at home are also used for other purposes that
That's
women
right.
are no longer able to easily access those drugs, even though they're not using them for abortion because of that, because they're sometimes used for
That's right.
abortions. They, like you said, women are having a miscarriage. Women can die from having a miscarriage, and they often need to seek medical attention, which that's being affected. Not to mention the undue burden that you know what? Let me just back up a bit here. Here's my long-winded thing for everyone, so prepare now. As we all know, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade on June 24th, 2022 via the court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. And before the Dobbs case was ever even heard by the Supreme Court, at least 19 U.S. states, Republican states, had enacted trigger laws that could be used to immediately ban or restrict abortion rights should Roe v. Wade ever be overturned. So, to just really paint that picture, that means 19 states wanted to criminalize and outlaw abortion so badly that they had already passed unconstitutional laws statewide, knowing that these laws were unconstitutional at the time they passed them and therefore unenforceable, but passed these laws anyway, so that if they ever did become successful one day in ripping the right to choose away from women, that these laws would already be there to instantaneously enforce rather than having to go through any kind of serious governing effort. I mean, by this point, right, they had no idea what an overturning or a functional overturning of Roe v. Wade could or would even look like. And then for them to make laws in accordance with this new Supreme Court decision, I mean, let alone conduct any kind of serious inquiry or legitimate research into the impact of this decision on their constituency or their constituency's opinions on the matter. Because the Dobbs decision didn't itself ban abortion. The Dobbs decision made it legal to ban abortion. And that's how anti-abortionists will try to weasel their way out of accountability for overturning Roe, because they know Americans are not happy about that. So they'll try to tell you, oh, you're being dramatic. The Dobbs decision didn't overturn Roe. It gave it back to the states. Okay, sure. The decision didn't ban or restrict abortion in every state, but it did so immediately in those 19 states and several states since. In fact, at least 21 states now today have laws that outright ban or severely restrict a woman's right to choose to such an extent that it might as well be banned. And oh, sure, you might live in a place like California or New York or Pennsylvania thinking, oh, phew, thank God that's not my state. Well, buddy, well, have I got some news for you. What do you think happens when nearly half of the US states no longer provide access to safe and legal abortion? Where do you think those people go? Because we know women in those states are still seeking them. Supply and demand, baby. Outlawing abortion doesn't stop abortion. It just stops safe and legal abortion. We know this. Why do they think they had to enact Roe to begin with? Women were dying left, right, and center. And, you know, like I said, don't even get me started on the no abortion, no exceptions, because this idea like transcends party lines, religious affiliations, and all other demographics for the most part. Americans, by and large, do not support banning, criminalizing, or severely restricting access to safe and legal abortion. And I mean pretty much all of them. 61% of Americans, all Americans, say it should be legal in all or most cases, compared to 37% who don't. 58% of men say it should be legal. 59% of whites, 60% of Hispanics, 74% of Asians, 68% of Blacks. Every level of education, regardless of a college education, are over 50% in support. Every age group polled well above 50%, though, you know, the older generation was the lowest, and they were still at 54%, except for one group. All of those that self-identify with a religion say that it should be legal. Even 60% of those who self-identified as moderate Republicans say it should be legal. There's only 2 recorded groups where less than half of their members support legal abortion, and that's conservative Republicans and evangelical Christians. So just to quickly wrap that up and circle back, like I said, the Dobbs decision itself, sure, didn't ban abortion, but it made it legal to ban abortion. So these state lawmakers that outlawed and in many cases criminalized, as you just mentioned, those who seek it, those who help anyone seeking it, and those who perform it, did so of their own volition, for their own agenda, and for their own gain, and not for the people whom they're supposed to represent, because we just covered how the people they represent do not support what they have just done. And the proof of that is right in the pudding that Ron DeSantis likes to stick his fingers in so much. Because every state that had the opportunity to answer the abortion question through referendum, including the red states like Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio, every single one of those states that had the abortion question on their ballot has voted to protect or enshrine the right to abortion in their state's constitution.
Yep.
Every single one of them. And just so we're clear, crystal clear, it is not a surprise or a coincidence that by registered party affiliation and their own self-proclamations, these lawmakers and their lobbyists who poured millions, if not billions, into anti-abortion efforts are overwhelmingly Republicans and evangelical Christians. These are the people enacting these laws all over the country and trying to enact them federally. So, okay, I'm off my soapbox, Denise.
Well, and gosh, and everything you said, it's wild. It's just wild. Just listening
It's a lot to
you
take in.
giving those stats and talk about that is just wild. It's just hard for the mind to receive that information. But it also reminds me, in talking about Ken Paxton going over what the judge said, it also reminds me of what happened in Ohio. The voters said, this is what we want. But the legislatures said, not so fast. We're not going to honor that.
Right.
You know, and I'm thinking, this country is just spiraling. It's just like going down a black hole. I mean, because this is why so many people, and I have a millennial age son, and he's getting to the point where he's just at the point where he says, what is the use in voting anymore? I mean, what is the use? Because he looks at stuff like Ohio, like what we're talking about with Ken Paxton, using those two things as an example. What's the use? You go and you say, okay, the judge says, let this lady have an abortion because she has a non-viable a fetus. The attorney general says, hold your horses. That's not going to happen. And if you do give her abortion, I'm going to prosecute you. Ohio voters said, no, we want to keep abortion legal here. And then, the Congress or whoever there says, no, we're not going to honor that. We're going to keep things just as it is. And this is making people skeptical and say, what is the use of me spending my time standing in a line or whatever to go and cast my vote for it to only be dismissed because my vote don't line up with what the opposition wants?
Because that's what they want. They want you and they want people to get so disillusioned that they don't participate, because they know that when we do participate in mass, they lose consistently all of the time. And this isn't me, hating on or bashing Republicans. Like, this is me telling you a fact. It is only Republican legislatures, Republican-controlled legislatures that are making these kinds of moves. And please feel free to fact check that. Look it up, because, please do it. Like, I don't care what side of the aisle you are on or what faith you practice. If you believe in and if you care about the right to privacy and the access to a safe and legal abortion, then you cannot, in good faith, cast a vote for any candidate or incumbent of the current political party. Removing this right to access and privacy is a foundational and defining part of the Republican Party itself. It wrote it itself into its own party platform and requires its members to feel that way.
Well, look how obscene. I think it's Texas and maybe some of the other red states that are talking about a woman can't use their highways in streets and whatnot to travel to another state to have an abortion. Now, exactly what does that look like? So every car, are you going to have checkpoints that every car that's out on the road, you're going to be stopping cars and administer pregnancy tests if there's whatever woman is in the car has to take an immediate pregnancy? What exactly does that look like?
That law doesn't look like anything because it's not a real law. It's something that they're doing to try and scare women, which is essentially legislative terrorism, first of all.
So this lets you know that it's not about the life of the fetus. This is all about controlling women. This all comes back to keeping women under control. You can't tell people to have babies if they don't want to have babies. So they're going to try to force it, because now when women say, okay, so if this is what you're going to do, we're just not going to get pregnant. Oh, well, we're going to take your contraceptives then. So if you're going to be sexually active, we're going to make sure you don't have contraceptives to use. So you're still going to get pregnant. You're still going to have a baby, because if you don't want the baby, you can't have an abortion.
Right, because it's not a good faith argument. In Colorado, they decided to offer free or reduced cost contraceptives. And you know what happened? The amount of abortions plummeted in Colorado. So if they were serious about wanting to stop abortion, these are the kinds of initiatives they would be taking on, and they're not doing that. Second of all, we don't even have to bring in maternal health and mortality rates, because we know that that's so poor, especially in comparison to other developed countries. And it goes so far beyond what we think about on the surface.
Okay, if we want to go back, take a step back to when you're talking about violence against women. Let's think about these 10 and 11-year-old girls that are being raped and getting pregnant. Okay, getting raped and getting pregnant by whether that's a member of their own families or whether that's anybody else, and being forced to carry that baby to term. This could be grandfather's baby, dad's baby, uncle's baby, brother's baby, cousin baby, next door neighbor's baby, being forced to carry this baby to term. And you tell me this is how you, I can't wrap my mind around the concept. But then you even got women that's going along with this foolishness, because they say a woman's body is equipped to carry a baby. Well, let me say this. I got pregnant with my first child at 19 years old. She was born when I was 20. That was the absolute most traumatic thing I ever experienced in my life at 19 and 20. I mean, she was born when I was 20. Even at 19 and carrying a baby at 19, I was an adult woman at 19 in college at 19 years old. I can't imagine being 10. Okay, 10. At 10 years old, my little body looked like a boy's body. Okay, and most 10-year-old girls are not very developed. Even if you're having a cycle to where you can get pregnant and have a baby, your body is not very developed at 10 years old. But my point is this: you're getting assaulted and you're getting impregnated, and you have to carry that baby for 9 months and then give birth to that baby. And I remember at 20 giving birth and wanting to climb the walls because it was so traumatic. So now when we go back and looking at, so in this scenario, you're looking at violence against a baby, because a 10-year-old is in essence a baby. And then her she's not allowed to have an abortion for these no excuse abortions. And then she has to give birth to a baby. And then you got these people running around here talking about, oh, we'll just somebody will take your baby and raise your baby, just give birth. Somebody will raise it for you and all this kind of stuff. And it's just painful. When I hear this stuff, it is so painful to me. It's just absolutely painful.
And being pregnant and giving birth is one of the single most dangerous things a woman can engage in. And it's getting worse, okay? In 2020, and this is a high number. In 2020, the rate of maternal mortality was 23.8 of every 100,000 births. And we know there's like tons of births per minute. So, these are high numbers. And the next year, in 2021, it was 32.9 per 100,000. That's a big jump. We went from 23.8 to 32.9 in 1 year. We are not progressing in the right way. And so for you to ask seriously for women to put their lives online and have on the line, literally, and have no say in that is disgusting. And to your point, yeah, there was that 10-year-old girl, one of many, unfortunately, who was the victim of a rape and incest situation at 10 and had to leave her home state of Ohio to seek abortion elsewhere. And we don't even have to get into the undue burden that puts on women. Who's paying for the gas? Who's paying for the travel, the lodging, the appointment, the abortion, the everything, the unnecessary medical tests that states require doctors to do, that doctors themselves say are not medically necessary and not required or needed at all to perform this, but do so anyway because it costs more money, it's more invasive, and it puts more undue burden on women.
I saw one where the little girl was 11 and she was in the labor and delivery. And it was so heartbreaking. It brought tears to my eyes because the child was calling for her mother while she was giving
Oh my
birth.
God.
She was screaming for her own mom,
Because she's a baby
because she's a
herself.
baby. Right. Right. And this was a case where the stepfather, it was a stepdad who had raped this child and got her pregnant. And she's screaming for her own mom while she's giving birth to a baby. And like I said, and I remember being 20 years old, having to get an epidural, having to be cut in a certain place to make it more accessible for the baby to come out. And I was a whole fully grown woman. So I cannot even think about being 10.
And that just, we're not going to get into the whole adoption thing. We know that children who are a part of the foster care system have really poor outcomes in pretty much every aspect of life, from education to work to everything. So we'll save that conversation for another time. But it doesn't, even if you were to put the child up for adoption, that doesn't stop you from going through the traumatic experiences you've just described. That doesn't prevent you from having to pay extremely expensive hospital bills that come out of giving birth. And it's just, then these are the same people that want to outlaw abortion. These are the same people that want to cut things like food stamps, WIC, women, infant, and children, all of the things that would help
Obamacare.
a woman who wants to have an abortion but then ends up not having an abortion and keeps it. All of the things that would support this woman and being able to have a happy, healthy, successful life with her and her child. They want to cut that. They want to take it away because they care about fetuses. But once you're born, you might as well just
Exactly.
screw off because they don't care anymore.
And this is through no fault of your own. You put all this burden on this child, or even on this woman, by forcing her to have this baby. But like you said, you don't. But you want to shred the social safety net that would help her with WIC or food stamps or even temporary financial assistance or whatever it is.
Housing.
Once the baby get here, like you said, she's on her own at that point. However you
And
feel.
it takes two people to make a baby. Women are just the ones that have to carry the baby. But I'm not seeing any kind of accountability for males. I'm not even seeing pushes for male birth control. If a woman can only get pregnant and have a baby one time per year. A man can get infinite amount of women pregnant in a year and per day. Multiple of them, any of them. It just but of course it's the burden of contraceptions on women, because that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
Absolutely. Oh my God. The things that I could say to that one. Absolutely. Yeah.
I just saw that they were having they did a study about a new male birth control that they were trying to bring to the shelves, and men were out here complaining, oh, the side effects. Oh my God, welcome to our lives, buddy.
Are you serious? Oh my God. Oh, we could take
Well,
it
you know
outside.
the side effects of having a kid, or the side effects of all
Oh
the shit
my
that we've
God.
had to take?
Oh my gosh. You
I was
tried
blown away.
with a whole human being, walking around with a whole human being inside your body. Okay.
But
And
here's
then
the
trying
thing
to
is that
push
people,
a whole human being out of your body. The pain that goes along with that. There's no greater pain in the world, they said, than pushing a baby out of your body. And I totally agree.
oh, they did a study on that too. They hooked up a little machine to a male's genital region and put the pain scale on what it would be comparable to for a woman. No man could make it to the level
They
of
can't.
birth
You
pain.
can't even take a cold. Okay, they turn into 2-year-olds if they get a bad cold. Please. You know what I mean? Women still got to get up, get the kids ready for school, get them off to school.
And the thing about it to me is I love all the people the men in particular who were like, oh, the side effects. Buddy, the side effects. Okay, now all of a sudden you care about the side effects because you were the same people just telling us a minute ago, oh, well, why wouldn't you just take birth control? Negating the fact that we talked about how they're trying to take contraception away from us. But the onus and the burden of taking birth control has always always been on us.
And then,
And now you want to complain about the side effects and people care that you're complaining about them? Where were they when we've been complaining forever?
then there are those who, even something as simple as the condom, that say, "Oh, well, that's not comfortable. I don't want to use that." And you're like, "Huh?" I mean, come again. Everything is on the woman. Everything. And it's like society still places everything on the woman. There's even women that will still blame the woman.
And that's just
It's like your
internalized misogyny
responsibility.
because it's baked in.
Yeah, and I look at women like women who do that. I look at them like they got 10 heads. Like, did you just step off with a crazy bus? What is wrong with you? I mean, I don't see how people like my grandmother, my mom, my grandmother, her mom, or whoever, but they had no voice at all. I mean, women were really just here for men, period. That's the only reason you come into the world, and you're here for men from the time you come into the world to the time you leave this world. You do not belong to yourself. You're like puppies. You're property, and that's it. And you don't belong to yourself. And this is why I when I talk to young women, I'm like, you are an individual. You are nobody's property. You are
Yeah.
an individual. You have a mind. You have a voice. Use it. And if you're in a situation where you feel like you're being treated as property, you need to get out of that situation quick, fast, and in a hurry, because that don't get
Yes.
better. If you don't cut that off at the knees from the beginning,
No.
that just exacerbates on it, and it gets worse, worse, worse. So no, and like I just don't see how the women from way back in the day, how they made it, because I'm too strong-willed. Bye. Don't let that door split you in 10 different ways on the way out, buddy, because I don't play that. You know what I mean? And it doesn't even matter the age, the mindsets. I don't understand it, but I feel so badly for a lot of these young women, because that thing about having a baby is a personal decision. And
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
personal decision. And abortion is not something, no, I don't see nobody. Maybe there's a time when some people may use abortion as a form of birth control. Let me change that, because I do know
Maybe.
some
I
people
doubt
that
it though. It's expensive and painful.
it is, isn't so listen, they just act like you just monsters, and you got people like that orange doofus that's running around here telling people that women are giving birth
Ugh.
to babies and then killing
And
them after they're born,
yeah. Oh my God.
and
Oh
you
my
got these
God.
people
Most
believing that. That's not an abortion.
right.
That's
Right.
murder.
And to your exactly, and it's already illegal and not happening anywhere. It's
That's
so ridiculous. The fear
if
mongering.
anywhere, that is outright murder. The child is out of the womb. The child is breathing, alive, and you killing the child on the. Oh my
I
God!
know. The just absolute lies. The fear mongering. It's so gross.
And
But
they
to your
buy
point
it.
about
They lap it up. They believe it.
they do. I'm just please look at something, you guys. There's so much data, so much information out there. Just look it up. It's fine. That's not a possibility. But
Please
again,
read
it's
yourself. This man is a
yeah.
little bit. He don't know
Or
what.
listen to this podcast. Do something.
Please listen to somebody who can tell you the truth. Nobody is giving birth to a baby, and once the baby
Nobody.
comes out, you're killing the baby on the table.
Right.
That's murder.
Nobody.
There's like
And honestly,
there's already laws against murder.
yeah. Yeah, I think well, actually, there are some people who cause me great concern in this society, but I was under the impression that we all agreed murder was wrong.
That
But,
murder.
looking at what they've done in
Okay.
Charlottesville and
I mean, yeah,
whatever,
you
but,
can actually go to prison for killing
right,
somebody who's
in every
alive.
state, everywhere in the US.
Okay, I think all 50 states are in agreement that you just can't kill somebody that's alive.
Right.
Okay,
No.
so I mean, he tells them that, and they go right here. "Oh, they're killing babies after they're born," and I sit here and I slap my forehead and say, "Oh God." They actually believe.
And just to be like clear for our listeners, if they weren't clear, we are not sitting here saying, all of you people, everybody and their mom needs to be, and their dad needs to be like super pro-abortion, like they're all going to go get abortions. No, what we're saying is you need to support the women's choice to have that decision in their privacy of their doctor and themselves. This is not your decision to make. That's all we're asking people to acknowledge. My grandma's a perfect example of that. She used to always say that she was personally pro-life and politically pro-choice because it's not her decision to make for another woman, nor is it her business to make any kind of assumption or thoughts about that woman's decision, because she has no idea of the situation that woman may have gone through, why she wanted to get an abortion, what decisions led her there. And that was totally up to her. And it wasn't my grandma's business. And that's firmly how she stood. And she always voted on the pro-choice side,
And
even
that's
though
and
she
that's
wouldn't get
exactly
one.
where I am. I am, to me, I have I've been pregnant twice in my life. I have 2 children. Abortion was never an issue, was never an option for me. But I don't know why another woman had to make that decision for her life. And, why she made that decision is her decision. I don't hold that against her because that was her decision. And she has that right to make the decision for her life. And the thing that scares me right now is these harsh abortion laws that they're putting in place is going to cause women to go back to doing what they used to do a long time ago with that coat hanger. Because I remember when I was in college, and I was when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was in college. And one of the last thing I wanted to do was to tell my mom that I was pregnant my sophomore year of college. And that's the last thing I wanted to do. But my roommate was telling me all these different ways that I didn't have to go through with it. Yeah, she brought up the thing about the coat hanger. She brought up this thing about filling the bathtub up with scalding hot water, like I was going to be a fool and sit my butt cheeks in a bathtub full of scalding hot water. This thing about drinking a whole bottle of castor oil. I mean, she went on and on and on and on and on about these different things. And I was like, girl.
Women seriously died all the time. That was the whole reason we enacted Roe v. Wade to begin with.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And like, people just need to be more considerate. Like, we've gone over a lot of stats today. Let's see here. 1 in 3 U.S. women have experienced some form of physical violence. 1 in 5 have been raped. 1 in 4 U.S. women will have an abortion by the age of 45. 1 in 4, 1 in 3, 1 in 5. These are people that you know. You know someone who has experienced the things that we have just talked about. And when people just talk and run their mouths, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care about anything. There is no possibility. There is no world where you do not know somebody, whether that knowledge is known to you or not. You know somebody who has experienced these things that we're talking about. And so when we're having these conversations and saying these things out loud, we need to be really considerate about what we're saying, because the chances are that someone in the room listening to you has experienced what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you haven't, at some point you will. I mean, because this is something that affects a large segment of the population. And it's a conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to be truthful. And a lot of these Republicans that are pretending that they care about the fetus, how are you going to care about the fetus but not the child that's born?
Thank you.
There's that hypocrisy again.
Because it's not about actually wanting to stop abortion. Because if it were, they would do things like we've talked about: provide free or reduced cost contraceptives, provide support for single mothers, provide universal child care, WIC, STAR, all these things that we know support lowering abortion rates. They're not interested in. So that's how we know for sure it's not about the abortion, and it's about the control of women.
And you cannot drag people back 50 years. And this is what seems to be what they want to do. Instead of helping people with these programs, you want to mentally drag people back to the 40s and the 50s.
Yeah.
Good luck with that one. Good luck with
We will not go quietly, that's for sure.
not at all.
At least, I won't. If I'm going back kicking and screaming.
Exactly. And how do they think they think that's going to happen in the first place? Because nobody is going to go back to that time when men tell women what to do. What are you going to want next? You would tell us to walk behind you. You can't don't look a man in the eye and all of this stuff, and
Don't open a bank account.
tell women they can't have bank accounts and they got to stay home. You got barefoot and pregnant. The whole barefoot and pregnant thing is, tell me what does that look like? How are you going to do all this?
It's not even possible anyway, because you can't support a household on a single family income anymore.
Oh,
I
right.
mean,
Oh, yeah, that's right. Please, pray tell how you
that's the only reason women were ever allowed into the workforce to begin with, because male wage stagnated in the 70s and 80s.
Women making more money than men these days for the most part. So if you want her to stay home, go ahead with your little small paycheck. And tell me, mortgages back then was what, about $500?
There's actually only one subset of women that make more money than males do, and that's unmarried, childless women.
And those are the ones that they are having issues with these days. The single, unmarried, childless women. Most of them are educated women. A lot of them have their own businesses, and they got their own houses and land and everything. They hate those women. Those are the ones they talk about the most on those podcasts. It's that group of women. They hate them because they think that too many women aspire to be like them. But if she went to school or she was able to make her money to get what she wants, who should be trying to stop her?
And some of these women want to be, homemakers and mothers and be those types of things, and also be this strong, successful woman. And there is a world. Right. There's a world where you can have all of that, but it would require these people to stop doing what they're doing to us. Like, they have made it nearly impossible to be that kind of woman and also have children and also have to be the caretaker of your home and all of these other things that get put on women. Until we start distributing these burdens more equally, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to get women that are going to choose to not have children and instead pursue a career because they view it as not being able to have both, even if they wanted it.
The South Korean women are saying that they're going to stop having children, if I'm not mistaken, until the economic situation gets better. They're going to just stop having children. And it's creating an uproar. I mean, like, it is creating an uproar, not just in their country, but over here too, because they're like, oh yeah, and then they'll start saying the same thing over here, blah, 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 blah. Oh, so women just don't get to make no decisions at all.
Yeah, I'm 26 years old, almost 27. I'll be 27 on Earth Day, April 22nd. And so a lot of my friends are around my age, some are a couple years older than me. We're all probably around, like, we're the age people, everybody starts at the different times, but like prime time baby having age, okay? And you know how many young people my age are completely disinterested in having any kind of babies because they're like, what am I going to do? Bring a kid into this society, in this economy? Yeah, right.
I've been seeing a lot in your age bracket. These are the ones that I those TikTok videos that I follow, a lot of young ones like you that say a lot of them are disinterested in being married. They're disinterested in having children because, like you just said, why bring children? Some of them are thinking, why bring children into this current situation that we have in this country, in this world, the violence, the cost of everything, and they're just not interested. But it is just, just getting back to the topic at hand. This is why we need. Oh, this is what I meant to say. A lot of these decisions being made about abortion, women's health, anything dealing with women. Have you noticed the one thing that infuriates me is that these decisions are being made in rooms where there's not even one woman at the table.
I know.
Not one
Oh.
woman at the table. In what real functioning world should that be happening? No input
Right.
from no woman, not even not even a woman from the medical field. You don't even have one female in the room. They're all men.
I mean, not only do they not have women, they don't have doctors, they don't have these kinds of people in the room. They said that even a woman with an ectopic pregnancy is not allowed to have an abortion, and she has to try to have the egg re-implanted into her, which is not possible.
What?
And it will kill you. An ectopic pregnancy can kill you and will kill you if it is not taken out through a procedure that is called an abortion.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my.
And that's a real law, okay? That they actually tried to put in. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. How are we in a world where they can try to pass laws that aren't even medically possible?
How do you
And
re-implant
right. And when we're talking about this representation thing, I have actually some really unfortunate stuff to share with you there. It's not enough to just put a woman or a person of color into these areas, because you know what happens then? Through the research, through the data, of course, not every woman, but in general, that woman tends to act more like a man rather than a woman insofar as, the decision making, doing the things that her male counterparts expect of her rather than doing the things that she would like to do. And the same thing like with people of color or with people who are low income. If you put, let's say, people low income, you put one there, that might make a difference. But if you just put a woman or a person of color who's rich like everybody else into a position, they're more interested in protecting the interests of their rich class than they are in protecting the people that look like them.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
it's so just entwined and a part of everything that we do. And it's not enough just to be like, oh yeah, we'll put one person here, put one person there. Boop, there we go. Has a dash of color, has some hair, long hair. That's not enough. We need to be concerted, and there needs to be more. And they need to come from every level of income.
That is crazy. You're right, though. You're absolutely right. It's oh boy, we
So,
got
Denise,
so much work.
do you think Republicans are right to dismiss the existence of the war on women as a political game, or do you think there might be something else going on? All right, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our lively discussion about the war on women. We hope that you get as much out of it as we did. But stay tuned for part 2, where we answered that question, dive a little deeper, and talk about the solutions. Where do we go from here? Where do we go next? How do we put an end to the war on women? In part 2, you'll also get to hear our deals of the week. As always, thank you for tuning in and being a part of our podcast community. Your engagement really means the world to us. You can follow us at @therealdeal_pod. Again, that's @therealdeal_pod. See you for part 2.